how far is Kluber going to go? Or are they going to let him go deep into games? I don't think he's going to go deep into games for the next couple weeks, maybe for the rest of the season.
Doesn't sound like Pierce cares about much today.
And who cares about hair products, right?
Yeah,
now to chase or fade, gentlemen. This is agree or disagree with the following statements, and then, of course, you have to tell us why. Steve, you have to roster one of the 4 pitchers over $11,000 on the slate tonight. Are you chasing or fading?
Yeah, I got to chase this one. I mean, we have some huge names on this slate tonight. Justin Verlander against the strikeout-prone Rockies. Patrick Corbin against another team that strikes out a lot, the Texas Rangers. Corey Kluber. Yeah, that's enough. James Paxton against the Oakland A's, 11,100. I mean, look, like I mentioned, the Rangers and the Rockies are both teams that strike out. Corbin has been a lot better lately. He's got some massive strikeout potential, so you have to like that matchup there, even though it's in Globe Life Park. The Rockies on the road against right-handed pitching, 293 Robo with a 155 ISO. That certainly aren't numbers that are going to scare you. And then don't forget, Paxton struck out 16 Athletics through 7 innings, the only time he faced his team already this season. 44.2 DK fantasy points. The only guy I'm not touching, and Pierce mentioned Kluber's probably not going to go deep tonight because he's going to get rocked. The guy can't pitch anymore. I don't even know how he's this expensive. 11,500 for what? 12 DK fantasy points tonight? Leave Kluber on the board. Check out the other 3 guys.
Okay, hot take right there. Gary, and Kluber, though, arguably has the best matchup against the Reds. What do you think? Who are you taking?
I mean, it's a fine matchup, but we played this game last night, and, you know, regardless of how good you are or how great your home run suppression numbers are, and Kluber's for his career are quite good. They're not that great in 2018. It's tough trusting a guy at Great American Ballpark. So I'm kind of with Steve here. I like maybe 2 of these guys above 11K, and I like one of them enough where I definitely have to chase this. But Paxton's in an interesting spot. I mean, Oakland's been so potent offensively the last month or so. They also have the 3rd highest zone contact rate in the league across the last 30 days, up around 89%. That does not necessarily lend itself to high strikeouts. So I'm all about Patrick Corbin tonight, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be because you get that price drop off of Verlander. But you look at this guy, anytime Texas is facing a left-handed pitcher, you have to be interested in that left-handed pitcher. Texas has no problem sending out their left-handed bats against any lefty. They have nearly over 100 more left-on-left plate appearances than any other team in baseball. And their lefties in those 650-plus plate appearances have a 29.8% strikeout rate. I think Patrick Corbin's going to be able to take advantage, and they've got 4 lefties in there tonight against them.
Sweatometer going off. All right, Pierce, last but not least, you got 4 guys on this slate that are going to cost you over 11K. Are you paying up?
Yeah, I'm going to chase this. And Verlander's the obvious play. As Steve mentioned, the Rockies struggle against right-handed pitching. They struggle on the road when they get out of course field. But he may not be cute enough to get the job done in GPPs. And Gary alludes to probably what you need to do. You got to be a little cute. You got to take maybe Corbin in a place where you're not going to feel comfortable at Texas. Or I know Steve says don't play anyone at Great American Ballpark, and also don't play Corey Kluber because he's not pitching well. But, hey, you're going to get low ownership on a pitcher who is still a good pitcher. And if you want to separate from the Verlanders and you want to separate from the Paxtons, maybe you take the risk. I know Great American Ballpark's a tough place to go, and a good pitch turns into a home run. But, hey, if you want low ownership, that might be where you need to be.
Hey, Gary, and chase or fade this. You can trust the D-back stack in another good spot tonight against Texas. They will not have A.J. Pollock, though.
Yeah, it makes it harder to chase this. I'm still going to say you can trust them. Like, I have no problem getting a couple Diamondbacks in there, but the problem is if you're paying up for one of those 11K pitchers, who are you actually going to get into your lineup here? You probably can't afford Paul Goldschmidt. You probably can't afford David Peralta. So now, where it seemed like you might at least be able to get A.J. Pollock and maybe pair him with one of the lesser, you know, your Martes, or even if you want to go down all the way and just say you're punting catcher and play Alex Avila, there were some options, but A.J. Pollock was kind of the key to this cheaper version of the Diamondback stack, and it's not really there. Like, if you have that money, just stack the Indians. Like, I feel like the Diamondbacks are not something I'm going to have massive exposure tonight. Can they hit Yovani Gallardo? Sure, anyone can hit Yovani Gallardo, but with A.J. Pollock not in there, it makes this situation a whole lot less appealing.
You think, Steve, maybe people stay away from this, though, because Gallardo is 4-0 since the All-Star break, 2.78 ERA. Would you stack the D-backs?
Yeah, I'm going to chase this one, even though they were pretty disappointing last night. Only 41 total DK fantasy points, and that's after I wrote them up. So that one really, hit home. That was really not nice of them. But we were saying Gallardo is just not a good pitcher. I don't care about the 4-0. Wins mean nothing, and he's not going to get a win here tonight. 322 WOBA at home with the 5.41 FIP. And the only thing that's a downfall here is that they're more expensive tonight than they were yesterday, and that's kind of the appeal there. If you talk about recency bias, I can see that scaring away some people. So my exposure is not going to be huge here. Maybe I'll do a 3-man stack here, but if I take a quick right down Narrative Street, it is David Peralta's birthday, so you got to go with the birthday narrative there. That's always something you have to consider, but he's super expensive tonight. I think he's 5,700. But yeah, I mean, it's a good spot for them overall, but I can see how people can get scared away there.
Sweater meter absolutely going off right now. It must have been the birthday narrative line that you just dropped. Let's see. Pierce, you like the 5.8 run projection. Would you stack the D-backs tonight? What's it going to take for you to do that?
Well, fade this, because when did that run projection come in? Wasn't it assumed that A.J. Pollock was going to be in the lineup? That lineup is not very good. If you're stacking and putting 5 players in your lineup, you've got at least 2 guys. One of them's probably Nick Ahmed, and good luck with that.
Oh, here we go.
Play Nick Ahmed, not against a righty.
And
Garrett's not that bad. He's got, a 30% fly ball rate at home, 35% hard contact. That's kind of in between, but he's not this dumpster that people are making him out to be. He's okay, and the Rangers bullpen is fine. You may get a couple runs here or there, but I don't think this is the place where you actually have to stack.
Steve, do you have a rebuttal to that?
To which one? He made a lot of terrible points.
Ahmed. I think Nick Ahmed specifically.
He made a lot of terrible points. Why don't you just pick one?
Just give us one.
Well, like we've learned before, Pierce likes to play Nick Ahmed when it's convenient for him, but trash on him otherwise. So, I mean, he's a phony. So that's okay. We can go on to the next one.
Make up your mind, Pierce.
All right, guys. We're going to have to cut him loose now, I think.
We're cutting him loose?
We're going to have to cut you guys loose.
All right, we're going to see you guys again in about 15 minutes when, Steve, you will give us your must-plays of the night. Until then, here is Tyler Sullivan with the latest on Mike Trout's situation.
Mike Trout looks like he's going to be away from the Angels for a bit longer than originally thought. The 2-time MVP was placed on the 10-day disabled list on Friday with an inflamed right wrist. That DL stint was retroactive to August 6th, and Trout was expected to come off of it on Thursday, but now the Angels are saying he may not be available for that game as he's left the club to tend to a family matter. Trout is having another strong season in LA, averaging 11.1 DK points per game, but if he's going to be out a little longer, there are some solid options to place in lineups. Eric Young Jr. could end up being a really good value play in Trout's absence, as he's filled in at center and is averaging 7.1 DK points per game over the last 10 outings. He won't give you the power that Trout has, but can provide that versatility by swiping a few bases, and he's worth just $3,200 for Tuesday's slate, which only makes him a more attractive DFS option. Another name to keep an eye on with the Angels is Cole Calhoun, who's been on absolute tear. Over his last 10 games, Calhoun is hitting over 300 to go along with 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, which rounds out to a 10.5 DK point average over that stretch. He's not as much of a deal as Young, but that production with a $4,100 price tag for Tuesday's slate is still some solid value.
Joining me now is Dallas Braden, former MLB pitcher, current MLB broadcaster. Dallas, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Now, obviously, DraftKings is involved in fantasy baseball. Chris Davis, after 40-plus HRs last year, he's back up over 30 this season. How important is his presence in the middle of this lineup?
It is paramount. You want to talk about an offense going as a player goes, this is one of those guys. What Crush Davis brings to this lineup day in, day out, what he does is he alleviates. He takes pressure off guys in front of him, behind him. He makes guys better. He gets guys behind him and in front of him to see better pitches, whether he's on base. Chris Davis is a guy who I say when he wakes up in the morning, he's already in scoring position. So when he's in the lineup, he's better. Guys around him are better. That's just the type of player he is.
Yeah, he's had a lot of time since he woke up ready to go. So now what about Matt Olson? He's getting a chance to play every day. What improvements have you seen from him this season?
Well, not only is he playing every day, he's been entrusted and tasked with the ability to face lefties day in, day out. Doesn't matter who your best lefty is on the mound. Matty O is going to stare them down. He's starting to use the whole entire field. He's a guy with tremendous pull side power pop, but when he starts to shoot the ball to the left center gap towards the shortstop as well, that's a vacated spot that people are shifting out of for him. So we've really seen him start to use the entire field. That's just one mark of a guy really starting to progress and evolve.
How often have you played fantasy sports, and what's your favorite fantasy sport to play?
Oh, it's real. Fantasy sports are very real. Are you kidding me? I think obviously everybody's probably got a fantasy football team or two that they're looking to draft here in the upcoming weeks, looking to get ready to go. So it's a big deal. I mean, every clubhouse across baseball either has multiple leagues, has one big league, whether or not you're teamed up with a few guys and you're throwing a big chunk of money around, whatever it is. Because let's be real, it's exciting. You got to have incentive, all right? That's what we're doing. Draft day is a big day in Major League Baseball.
I gotta know, do you ever get fans talking to you either in person or on Twitter about how A's players have impacted their fantasy team?
A lot of the time, yeah, I do. I also happen to work for Barstool Sports, so we get a lot of guys and girls that hit us up on the podcast and hit us up on the internet about, Crush Davis helped me, Crush Davis walked me off, that homer, the Blake Trinan save got me over the edge. I hear it a lot, and I understand because I've got these guys on my teams as well. Don't let them know.
Your secret's safe with me. Now, you're going to forever be tied to the A's thanks to your playing career and now your broadcasting career. So we are DraftKings. We're going to ask you to draft your top 3 all-time A's.
Ooh, wow. Top 3 all-time A's. Man, I think, let's start with one. Ricky Henderson. We're here. They play baseball at what I call the Ricky Henderson Field. So you got to start with Ricky. And then I think you probably, I'm going to have to go Raleigh just because him and I were mustache aficionados. So I got to go with Raleigh Fingers. And then I don't know, I just played golf with Jose Canseco. I mean, it might be Big Mac. Maybe I'll run Jose just because I got a soft spot in my heart for the big fella.
There you go. Well, you can't draft yourself, but I'm sure some people out there would. Dallas Braden, amazing to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks for having me once again. Have a great season.
Popular demand, fresh off a trip to the Fantasy Baseball World Championships. That would be the one, the only, Mr. Pat Mayo.
Yeah, so Pat, you emceed this event in New York, hosting a few shows for DK while you were there. So share with us and everybody who's watching what that experience was like for you.
Well, it was kind of funny because we go on like 2.5 hours before the actual Fantasy Baseball World Championships start. So then we're off for a little bit. I'm going around meeting all the players in the room. Some of them I know from before, and we're talking. This guy's in first place for 30 minutes. Then all of a sudden he's in like last place the next time I see him in an hour. But as soon as Jeff Collins, who ended up winning, he took a lead like with 2 hours left to go, and just to see how excited he was, yet not showing how excited he was and trying not to say anything was pretty hilarious throughout the entire night. And then we went back on live for like the final half hour, and someone almost caught him. It looked like he was going to have a nervous breakdown.
So you're just sitting there witnessing the lowest of lows and the highest of highs, these emotional roller coasters for people who probably wanted to jump off a bridge after they did not win. But
well,
Pat,
I wouldn't even say it was like that. I mean, some people knew where they were sitting. It's just one guy got ahead by so much that the really gruesome part was not even watching them go from highs and lows. It was watching one guy try to hold on to the lead. And the show that we were doing was, hey, here's how we can lose, in running through every scenario.
I would just be a glass case of emotion.
Yeah, you certainly would be.
Yeah.
Pat, but you looked good. I watched one of the videos. You look really good in the suit, man. You should keep that up, bud.
Yeah, listen, I can't get too fancy all the time. Then that sort of prestige event wouldn't have the same prestige anymore.
Well, it is time to make some friends, my friends. So let's bring in Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. They both come highly recommended, I am told. Talking golf, talking Wyndham Championship, final tournament before the FedEx Cup playoffs. Tears of joy, guys. This is when you give us your pick from a group of players in the same salary range. And guys above $11K this week, Webb Simpson, Hideki Matsuyama, the defending champion Henrik Stenson. So, Pat, who are you going with and why?
Of the, I mean, even if you expanded this to above $10,000 players, like, I don't think all of them are really all that great of players. They're too expensive for this field. Like, when we look at Webb Simpson, he's more expensive than Dustin Johnson is in a regular week. And even when you correlate that with odds in those events, Dustin Johnson is like 7-1. Webb Simpson this week is 14-1. So I'll go with the defending champion, Henrik Stenson. He didn't even hit driver on any hole here last year and ran away with it. He is the best player in this field. He's not coming with the best form, but that might keep some ownership off of him, so I still like him at his price point.
Yeah, so you're not very concerned with that discomfort in his elbow right now?
No, I'm not.
All right, Jeff, who you like?
No, I'll go with Hideki Matsuyama. I mean, Pat's right. No one's coming in really superior form here right now, so it's more of a class play. I just can't make myself pay up 11-6 for Webb Simpson, and quite frankly, he's been a little wild off the tee, so I know he loves this venue, but I feel like this soft course, this soft field, I think this is a good place for Hideki to get back on track. T3 here a couple years ago. He does everything well that Henrik Stenson does well, and just the fact that this is a less than driver course, it might get him back on track. He really only had one bad round last week, so I'll take Hideki for the upside out of these three.
Reed, you going to have the stones to take Webb Simpson here, bud?
No, I can't do it. Pat's right. I mean, if he's more expensive than Dustin Johnson is, I mean, he has to return top 3, if not win this. And granted, he is coming in as the #1 guy in strokes gained total since 2013, I think around plus 38. So, yeah, he loves this course. He's a North Carolina native. That narrative is there, but I don't think he comes in winning this tournament. I have to agree with Pat here. I think Henrik Stenson, when you look at a guy fit for this course at the Wyndham, you don't need to hit driver. It's a short course. This guy is elite when you look at all the different key stats in terms of approach, in terms of the proximity, and birdie or better's gain. So I'm taking Stenson here, and I get that price relief of about $600 off of Webb for a guy that's playing pretty well. So I got to go Stenson here.
All right, guys, then we've got a trio of players with their last chance to qualify for the FedEx Cup playoffs. Out of Shane Lowry, Sergio Garcia, and Graham McDowell, which one would you roster, Reed?
Yeah, it's got to be Sergio. I can't believe I'm saying this. I mean, this guy was elite. Coming into the Masters, he was playing really well, and a guy that was striking the ball with one of the best. But obviously, we've seen him miss a bunch of cuts recently. And those cuts in the last couple of tournaments, those aren't missed cuts by a lot. He's missed it by one or so in terms of where the cut line is. Yes, he's not playing very well at all, but in terms of numbers and talent, Sergio to me is the guy that I'm rostering. He's just outside. I think he's ranked 131 in terms of the FedEx Cup standings. You look at a guy and you look at the key stats again here and the type of golfer you want a guy who's elite with approach, and that's Sergio. So give me Sergio. Not comfortable, but give me Sergio.
Yeah, he just missed his 8th cut, but he has played this course a lot in his career. I guess that's got to count for something. Pat, who are you going with?
Yeah, it's Sergio. It's not close. So you're going to pay for a $10,000 Shane Lowry? Have fun with that. Graham McDowell's been washed for like 3 years. No, ever since Sergio made like the 17 on the 12th hole or the 15th hole at the Masters, it's really been a precipitous downslide for him. But Reed's right. He's missed the cut on the number 2 consecutive events. That's not great by any stretch, but if we're just talking about talent, you're getting a discount on price. You're going to get a discount on ownership. I'm not really a fan of any 3 of these guys, but if you have to play one, you play the guy who's like 20 times as good as the other ones, and that's Sergio.
All right, Jeff, Sergio, he's failed to make the weekend all 4 times in 2018. Are you going to stick with him? They seem to be standing by their guy.
Yeah, Reed and Pat with 2 horrible picks so far. Big shocker. Have fun with Submergio, because he's going to be in the water all week. Washed up? I mean, you're calling Graham McDowell washed up. Sergio Garcia can't even make a cut.
He won the Masters last year.
Oh, yeah, last year, 2017. Call me from the get in your DeLorean, Pat, and roster him last year.
Oh, yeah, so
go with the jokes.
So what you're going with is 2010 U.S. Open champion Graham McDowell?
Exactly. He's trending.
Old man trick.
He's playing pretty solidly. He's going to hit every fairway. He's going to actually make putts. Look, for the price discount, I'm kind of on board. I don't really love any of these 4 players, but I'll just take the cheaper one and Graham McDowell. He's got a little bit more upside for me than Steve Stricker. Really not playing as bad as people think, and this setup is prime Graham McDowell.
You guys might disagree on the players, but we can all agree Submergio Garcia is a great new nickname.
I also like Marty McFly for Pat moving forward. How about a guy we could be sleeping on here, also known as your sleeper pick, Jeff?
Yeah, my sleeper pick for this week is Blaine Barber. I mean, a player who's, again, he's outside of the cut for the top 125. He's been really solid. If you look over the last 12 weeks, he's top 20 in this field in a lot of key stats, off the tee, par 4 scoring, birdie or better. He's just a solid player, and he was in contention a couple weeks ago. I think this sets up really nicely for him. Putts better on Bermuda. So Blaine Barber at 7,100 should get really low ownership.
Reed.
Yeah, mine's going to be Corey Connors. I initially had Tyler Duncan here, but recent projected ownership has him in double digits. So really would go counterintuitive to what sleeper is. It's going to be Corey Connors at 6,500. This guy, look, when he gets the ball in play and when he's getting the ball in the fairway, he's pretty good. Strokes gained approach is coming in nicely over the last 24 rounds. And where this guy really fails is in putting. And that's where, again, this course, and we talk about it all the time, that's the most variant part of anyone's game is putting could go really can swing either way. So give me Corey Connors, guys, better, the top 25 in birdie or better gain over the last 24. Ball striking really well as well. If he can do something like he did at the John Deere, where he was gaining about 4.2 strokes in birdie or better gained, something like that, then we're going to be in business. But hopefully he can just have a normal day putting, Connors, and we'll be good.
And Pat, who are you digging deep for on this one?
Well, I mean, if I was going to go like scrub Canadian, I'd probably go with Jeff and I before I went with Corey Connors. But Mackenzie Hughes is the cheap Canadian that you want this week. Not my guy, though. I'm going to go with Doc Redman. And hey, who is Doc Redman? Joaquin Niemann is stealing all the buzz about the amateur that turns pro and then really excels. Redman has not excelled whatsoever yet. But if you look back at the courses that he has now played well on as a pro, you'll get the Quicken Loans, a less than driver course off the tee, and the Heritage, a less than driver course off the tee. Made the cut in both, made the top 25 in one as well. He's someone at 6,600 who's just getting no buzz, going to be sub 1% owned, and actually has elite pedigree. He just hasn't quite gotten there yet because Niemann has just cast a shadow on everyone. Big Norm, that's who everyone's going at the bottom. Don't make that mistake. Go with Doc Redman.
All right, before you guys take off, how about your slate-approved picks, your lock for the tournament? And it's okay if we haven't mentioned them in this segment. Got to be quick with it. Pat, who are you taking?
My main man, we're going with the Spaniard, not Sergio, Rafa Cabrera Bello. He is going to hit every fairway. He's lights out with his wedges. If he get that hot putter, he's going to end up in the winner's circle for his first ever PGA win. When you look at his results in America, they're not the best. Consistent, but not the best. But look at the tournaments he plays. Majors and WGCs. This is a field with a bunch of bums. He's going to be fine.
Bold. All right, Jeff, who are you taking?
I'm going with Billy Horschel. I mean, it's August. It's late summer. Who likes to make money in August and late summer? It's Billy Horschel.
Yeah, baby.
Got a fantastic record at this event. He's been very, very consistent off the tee lately. I like the way this is setting up. I think he's playing well enough to win.
Finally, Reed, who are you taking?
Yeah, saving best for last. Give me the Chilean wonder kid, Joaquin Niemann. Pat just mentioned it. The spotlight's on him for a reason. He's one of the best. So, he's playing really well. Not one of the best. He's playing really well of late. So, give me Joaquin Niemann.
Alrighty, thank you guys. We got to cut you loose now because, we have a Hall of Famer to get to. Here's Iron Mike Ditka having a little chit-chat with Brendan Glasheen.
Joining us now on The Sweat, a very special guest, 3-time Super Bowl champion and NFL Hall of Famer, Coach Mike Ditka. Thanks for the time, sir. Every season, it seems like one or two teams rebounds from a bad year to make the playoffs the following year. What team or teams do you think can go from the basement to the playoffs this season?
Well, the goal of every team in the league, is to be better the year after. It doesn't matter what you did last year. You start new. But when you look at the Western Division, you look at San Francisco, you look at the Chargers and the Rams, those are three teams that have a lot of personnel. And I think they can get better in a hurry. I really do.
Are there any teams from last year's playoffs that are in danger, you think, of missing this postseason?
Age is something that comes with every team. Seattle has been so good for so long, but they're getting a little older. I don't know if the players can do what they did a couple years ago. I think Baltimore is the same way. You got to have big-time players on the offensive side of the ball, and you got to have a consistent defense and special teams. I say those two teams are going to have a hard time getting back to where they were.
Yeah, a number of teams also drafted quarterbacks this offseason. How hard is it, Coach, for a rookie quarterback to succeed right away in the NFL?
I think it has a lot to do with the system and the coaches. You can't expect too much of them. But these guys they're much more talented than they were 25, 30 years ago. These guys are better equipped. They come out of college with a better understanding of how to read defenses. They do a lot of things much better. I think they have a better chance of succeeding now than they did in the past.
Last year, speaking of rookies, Deshaun Watson, he seemed like he was on his way to a record-breaking rookie season, then he was stopped by a knee injury. If he's healthy this upcoming year, do you expect him to pick up where he left off?
I do. They got a great organization, and Bill's a great coach down there. Deshaun had a great year. He was going terrific, and I don't see why they can't pick it up. They got good receivers down there. They got a fairly decent running game and a defense, so I think they'll take a lot of the pressure off him. I think he'll perform well.
One of the big offseason stories, Coach, has been the perceived drama in New England with the apparent rift between Coach Belichick and Tom Brady. Two-part question. Number one, do you believe the story? And number two, how important is the team's success to the direct relationship between the coach and the quarterback?
I don't believe the story at all.
Okay.
There's no problem in New England. Bill is a great coach. The quarterback is as good as any quarterback's been in the league in the last 20 years. So, they understand what's good for their football team. That organization has always done the right things. And that coach and the quarterback, they might not be on the same page all the time, but they're on the same page 90% of the time.
Former Patriot Jimmy Garoppolo set the league on fire down the stretch for the 49ers. He's undefeated as a starter. What was that? Was that just flash in a pan last year, or do you see a big year coming for Jimmy G?
Well, I think the 49ers organization has made a big turnaround. I really do. I mean, they've always been a good organization, but I think they've kind of fallen off over a couple of years, and now they're coming back. I think he's a good player. I think he's a very capable player. And the quarterbacks become better when you put the people around them. You can give them a running game. You can give them some good receivers, a good tight end, a good defense. They get better in a hurry. And I think this kid has the talent to do a good job for them.
You were a former tight end. That's well documented. Do you think Rob Gronkowski continues to hold the title as top tight end in the NFL this season?
There's a lot of good ones, but Rob is, I said, people ask me about tight ends. I say one thing: they're bigger, they're faster, and they're stronger than they were when I played the game. But you look at the guys playing that position today, and Kelsey and those guys, they're great athletes. These guys could line up and probably play a lot of other positions if they wanted to. But the tight end has become a position where you got to be pretty athletic. Not like when I played. You just had to be tough when I played. But now you got to be a very athletic guy.
All right. Well, hey, Coach Mike Ditka, we really appreciate your time today on The Sweat, and we look forward to the season. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a good one.
We have a DK news alert. Robinson Cano is returning from his 80-game drug suspension with the Seattle Mariners tonight. So good for him. Maybe keep an eye on him. Maybe if you decide to plug and play him. We're going to talk to our baseball panel about it really quick. Steve, Garion, and Pierce. Steve, this news just came across my fancy tablet here. I'm not sure if he's in the lineup tonight or not, but what do you expect after a guy has missed 80 games because of a drug suspension?
I mean, I'm not in on him at all. I mean, that news came through and it didn't even faze me in the least. I mean, honestly, he hasn't been playing baseball a lot. I'm not even sure if he was in the minor leagues or not. But I mean, I'm going to give him a little while to get in tune with everything. But it has nothing for me on this slate tonight.
I have a feeling, Pierce, you don't care about this one either.
Well, I don't care more what you call it a drug suspension. It kind of seems a little more nefarious than it actually is. PEDs. Don't call it a drug suspension.
Well, those are drugs.
Wait a second, Pierce.
Are they not?
Performance-enhancing drugs.
Drug is in the name.
Get with it, Pierce.
But the people listening hear drug suspension and they think that, well, let's just move on.
Yeah,
Garion, someone's been doing drugs. What do you think about it?
What do I think about people doing drugs?
No. Not that. Not generally.
No, dude, that's DK after dark.
Yeah, DK after dark. No.
Hey, it's all legal up in Canada, guys.
I want to party with you, man.
Cano on this slate, I think I'm going to ignore him in general. He's got an okay price point because it's been so driven down by the fact he has been gone for 2.5 months. But yeah, I'm not really looking to see him out there tonight. He did have a 5-game mini rehab or whatever, but not tonight.
All right, let's introduce a segment we're going to call Put Up Your Bukes. It was a massive hit during our 2 months of run-throughs that nobody was watching. So, Steve, you're going to pick your top 3 picks from the night and a fantasy point projection for each one.
I don't know what he's talking about. Pearson Garian will then step in and tell you what's what. Guys, I have a feeling this segment could actually possibly be one of our highest rated going forward. It's just a weird feeling that I have.
Make it happen.
I can't explain it. Steve, who is your first pick?
Jesse, I like you. Dinner on me soon. So this is going to be, we're going to start with German Marquez, 21 DK fantasy points. Look, away from Coors Field, this guy has been excellent. 268 WOBA with a 349 FIP and a 34% hard hit rate allowed. He has really good strikeout potential with a 9.7 K9. I mean, look, admittedly, the Astros don't strike out much with a 21 K percentage on the year for his right-handed pitching, but Marquez can go deep into the games. He's gone at least 6 innings in 14 of his 23 starts on the season. And look, the Astros just aren't hitting right now. Correa has come back, but hasn't really made much of a difference over the past 2 weeks. Just a 314 WOBA and a 167 ISO for the Astros. So good luck with this one, fellas.
Gary and Marquez, do you think he's going to go deep enough into the game to get 21 DK fantasy points?
Well, Steve has gone and chosen himself a nice little cash game play here. I mean, I can't argue against Marquez. He's in a fantastic spot tonight. I think even across his last 8 starts, like the book on Marquez, generally speaking, is you play him when he doesn't have to pitch in the altitude at Coors Field. And he's been phenomenal, below a 270 WOBA on the road this season. His last 8 starts where he's got nearly a 30% strikeout rate and just a 6% walk rate. He's had 3 very solid outings at Coors Field in this time as well. So I think that with that plus strikeout potential that he can bring into a matchup that might look negative in that sense, I think he could possibly override that. And also, we focus so much on the home road splits with Marquez, we forget that he also dominates right-handed hitters. And even without 2 of their best right-handed hitters, the Astros are still a very right-hand dominant lineup. All the bats you would necessarily fear, sans Josh Reddick, are right-handed. So I think really the splits line up perfectly for this one.
Pierce, I saw you kind of frowning there. What do you think?
Well, if you get 21 points from German Marquez, congratulations, you've won $0. That's not going to get it done tonight. And if you take Marquez and you take one of the $11,000 pitchers, which everyone should do, that leaves you with, what, $3,300 for your batters? Good luck with that as well. It doesn't work. I wish Steve would have given us a real projection or a real total, like 25, 28 points from Marquez. He gives us this little weak 21 and then says, well, there's potential for strikeouts, and then also says the Astros don't strike out. So which is it? Is there strikeout potential or the Astros not strike out? And he's not going to get the win bonus. Astros are the best home team in baseball, have the best record at home. I don't see it.
Steve, you look like you're ready to fight.
I mean, it's just typical Pierce. I mean, he just fights just to fight. If you look at his lineups tonight, he's going to have 100% Marquez. Moving on, we're just going to go on. We're going to go with Harrison Bader. I mean, this guy is very quickly becoming my dude in the major leagues for 16 DK fantasy points tonight. I don't get why this guy doesn't get enough love when he faces left-handed bats. Left-handed pitching. He's just not getting the buzz at all. His salary has shot up. It was $3,700 10 days ago. I mean, that just shows how much production he's doing because that salary is shooting up lately, averaging 8 DK fantasy points in that span, 2 doubles with 2 home runs. Then you get the numbers against lefties. 407 WOBA with a 235 isolated power and a 38% hard hit rate. Look, he's going up against Gio Gonzalez tonight. I mean, he can't get righties out to save his job. 340 WOBA with a 4.65 FIP and 11 of his 13 home runs around. Give me Darth Bader tonight. He is my guy.
Darth Bader, Pierce, Revenge of the Nerds. What do you think about that?
Gio Gonzalez only gives up 30% hard contact, 30% fly balls, 1 home run per 9. I don't see him really giving up the home run here. And then I don't know why you love Harrison Bader. He's got it below 300x WOBA on the season. The guy doesn't hit the ball hard, doesn't put the ball in the air. And even against lefties, it's just a 330x WOBA. But here's the real stat that everyone cares about. The umpire tonight is Tripp Gibson.
That's a great name.
Extreme pitchers umpire. If we look at strikeouts per game, he is #1 in baseball. And guess who likes to strike out a lot? Harrison Bader, almost 30%. This guy's not going to hit a home run. He's going to strike out 4 times.
We got those ump stats. That's what we want out of Pierce. All right,
job, Pierce.
Garian, what about you? What do you think about Bader? And now, obviously, you have this other information about the ump also to consider.
Doesn't matter.
You gotta factor in those ump stats. I mean, I don't blame Steve here. I mean, we were both at the Fantasy Baseball World Championships this weekend, and why not pull a card out of the guy who won $500,000, Jeff Collins, playing Harrison Bader against a left-handed pitcher Saturday night. I mean, Steve mentioned a lot of the numbers. The one thing that I really like about this matchup is that Bader is also a great sinker ball hitter, has shown himself to be that so far this season, a 290 isolated power against the sinker. And that's not just against left-handed pitching. That's against sinkers in general. I mean, Gio Gonzalez does a nice job mixing his pitches. He's one of few starters who can actually claim to have a 4-pitch mix, but his most often used pitch is that sinking fastball. So I do think that this is a good spot for Bader tonight, although, as Steve mentioned, that price point is getting relatively close to the point where I have to cut this off.
All right, so, Steve, it looks like you had some agreement around your second pick. What about your third?
Yeah, the guy who agreed with me is the guy who was at the Fantasy Baseball World Championship. Pierce was at home watching us on his computer. Just make sure you know that. Okay, we're going to move on now. We're going to
Noted.
We're going to go to Jose Abreu for 14 DK fantasy points tonight. I mean, everybody always ignores Abreu simply because he's on the White Sox. I mean, I get it. That team is horrible. But this dude has been on a second-half tear so far this season. 410 WOBA since the All-Star break with a sweet 307 ISO with 7 of his 20 home runs. Overall against lefties, that's been his matchup this year. 388 WOBA, 269 ISO with a 44% hard hit rate. I mean, for him to be $4,300 hitting the way he is, I think he's just simply too cheap to ignore. The first base position is loaded as always, and that means people will simply ignore Abreu, and I think that'll be a mistake tonight.
Garion, do you think Abreu is good for 14 DK fantasy points?
I mean, he can hit a home run, sure. I think that one thing people are going to get into a dangerous situation with tonight is just assuming that the Tigers and every facet of the Tigers are terrible. Their bullpen's actually been rather good across the last 30 days, the 5th best FIP in all of baseball. So don't just think you're going to get 5 innings of one of the worst bullpens in baseball, and this Chicago White Sox team can start piling up numbers against, you know, AAA caliber arms. No, that's not the case. The Tigers have actually had quite a good bullpen the last little bit, so that limits my projection for all of the White Sox bats across the line.
Pierce, what about you? What do you think about Abreu?
I was just wondering, Steve, what place did you finish in the championship?
Oh, he's been thinking about that one.
That's a good question, Pierce.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on board with Jose Abreu. I understand the splits work out, but Blaine Hardy's not a bad pitcher. 290 xWOBA to right-handed bats. He's not giving up hard contact. He's not giving up fly balls to these guys. And then, guess what? Hunter Windelstedt behind the plate, 3rd most strikeouts per game. Top 10 when we talk about going under projected totals. You're on the wrong side here, Steve. It's about Hardy tonight. Don't play these White Sox.
All right. Get Julian back.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I like this, guys. Don't worry. We're going to bring you back one more time. We're going to let you go for now. I can confirm, though, in the first 40 minutes of this show's history, that is the highest-rated segment that we have had. So,
wow.
Great job. Great job to Steve Buchanan.
I just thought, I mean, I had a feeling. I don't know. So weird.
I know. It is really, really odd how we had that feeling.
Yeah. And, you know, we're going to have a couple more things to get to before we have our baseball guys back on. Tyler Sullivan is going to update us on Carmelo Anthony. And speaking of ball, we're going to have our NBA panel guys. They're also going to join us to talk a little bit about basketball. Is that something you're really looking forward to?
I am. And a couple of the guys in that conversation going to be LeBron James, going to be Steph Curry, going to be Kawhi Leonard. I'm really excited to see what Tyler has to say about the Carmelo Anthony move to Houston. Just his 4th team in the last year, and he's hooking back up with Mike D'Antoni. So that is coming up. But for now, let's have an injury discussion. We're going to bring in the heavyweight to help us with this one. Dr. Seelan Parekh, who is an orthopedic foot and ankle specialist at Duke University and is featured on the Fantasy Doctors.
And along with the good doctor, we're going to be joined by DK Live editor Alex Jankowski. And sorry, your intro isn't as lengthy, Alex, but you also don't have a medical degree.
That's a fact.
I can say that I was at the Fantasy World Baseball Championships.
Yes.
I was sitting there. That's something.
Yeah, add that in.
I wasn't.
It's all right, man. You're our trusted source here, Doc. Let's start with baseball. Would a move to the bullpen actually be good for oft-injured Cardinals ace Carlos Martinez?
You know, I actually think that this may be worrisome for Martinez. He's suffered, obviously, this season from a lat strain and an oblique strain, all kind of on the right side of his body. And that, to me, points to a couple of different things. Number one, his throwing mechanics are likely off, and so he's putting a lot of torque through the trunk of his body. And secondly, he may even have an underlying issue with the shoulder or the elbow, which is causing him to throw that way. In either scenario, the problem is if you put him into the bullpen, yes, he'll have lower pitch counts, but he will likely be throwing a lot harder on the pitches that he's throwing, and that has me concerned for a guy who has been injury prone this season.
All right, Alex, you're a big picture guy. If Martinez goes to the pen, which pitcher is elevated in the St. Louis rotation?
Well, St. Louis has just so many injuries as far as their starting rotation goes. Only Miles Michaelis was actually in the opening day 5-man rotation and is still healthy. Now you got Michael Wacha also on the DL, Luke Weaver dealing with that finger also. So guys like Tyson Ross, who they picked up on waivers, Austin Gomber, 5 shutout innings his last time out, looked pretty strong. And then John Gant, who's getting the ball tonight. Obviously, this move is more about Carlos Martinez, seeing if he can trust that side, that oblique, and find that control, which is usually an issue for him. So these guys are going to be in good position. But the younger guys, I hesitate a little bit to use them because this team is 2 games out of a wild card spot. They, have a lot to lose if they put a guy out there who's going to struggle. So, if Carlos Martinez looks healthy, he could be a middle reliever who they go to often. So guys like Gomber and Gant don't have to see lineups the 3rd time over. So that might cap their upside a little bit if Carlos Martinez does look healthy.
All right, let's shift our focus to football and the defending Super Bowl champs. Dr. Parekh, would you be surprised if Carson Wentz starts week 1? He admitted today on Philly radio that he isn't sure he'll be able to take the field.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he actually starts. Here you have a franchise quarterback whose future in multiple seasons is at risk if you push him too hard, too fast. And I know Wentz is a competitor. He wants to be out there. But why not give him the time he needs to be optimized? And that optimization usually takes 9 to 11 months to get there. And he's just not there in terms of that timeline. And yes, you see individuals like Adrian Peterson who shatter that timeline and do really, really well, but that's not the norm. And so I think if you obviously have Fultz in the background and he can actually carry you, why take a chance and put him in early and quickly? I think you take the time on him.
All right, so Alex, with Wentz tearing his ACL on December 10th, he was likely going to be the MVP candidate. Still isn't sure he's going to start week 1. You just heard Doc. So given the injury concern, where should he go in fantasy drafts? Where do you expect him to go?
Yeah, so his ADP right now is about 60. It's putting him kind of at the latter end of that top 10. And if he does end up missing time, then I do think that's pretty accurate. I'd like to get him, maybe even latter half of the top 5. But we're just not sure of the timetable yet. But I wouldn't completely cross him off my board by any stretch of the imagination, because when he comes back, this offense is set up to be better, at least as good as they were last year, if not better. I know Alshon Jeffrey has some injury issues as well, but I think Mike Wallace, huge step up from Torrey Smith. I think he has a lot more left in the tank. Certainly can take the top off the defense. I think he can do a little bit more than just that, though. I also like Jay Ajayi getting a full season with him in the backfield alongside Wentz. I think is going to help alleviate some of that pressure. And then at the end of the day, their schedule is really nice. According to Fantasy Pros, Wentz has the 5th easiest schedule for quarterbacks, or should I say Eagles quarterbacks have the 5th easiest schedule. So when he comes back, I think he'll be in a really good spot, but we're just not sure of the timeline yet. Right, like I said, bottom tier, that top 10 right now. And I'd still feel comfortable taking him there, knowing you probably only have to stream a quarterback maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks from there.
Hey, Dr. P, in the NBA, what are your expectations when it comes to a fully recovered Gordon Hayward this season?
I actually think you're going to see a fully recovered Gordon Hayward. I think he's going to be a great contributor to the Celtics this season. He had a devastating injury. He had his 2nd surgery after the primary surgery about 2 months ago to get the hardware taken out. And he is out there saying he has a normal ankle. Now, that's not entirely true. There's irreversible damage to that ankle, but I expect him to be 100% or at least 95% or better, which is fantastic for a guy like him.
All right, but Alex, given all the talent on the Celtics, is Hayward even going to get enough touches to be a viable fantasy option for next season?
I'm really not worried about Gordon Hayward's usage. I'm more worried about some of the other guys. in that offense. Sorry, I think Al Horford's going to continue to play that intangibles role. The Celtics love it. Fantasy owners hate it, absolutely, because you have no idea when he's going to be productive. But guys like Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, I think especially, they're going to take kind of a back seat. Now, I think Jason Tatum's still fine. That guy's going to just keep getting better and better. And then from a daily fantasy perspective, I still like Kyrie Irving when he plays. But remember, he's the guy who has more of the chronic knee issues, the ones that they're going to monitor throughout the season. So from a season-long output, I like Gordon Hayward's prospect a little bit better than Kyrie Irving just because, yeah, like Doc said, I think Hayward, now that he's back, he's going to be back, and he's going to be able to shoulder a heavy load in that offense.
All right, Alex and Dr. Parekh, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Anytime.
All right, well, we're sticking with the basketball theme. DK Live's Julian Edlow and RotoWire's Nick Whalen going to join us after the break to chat a little bit about ADPs and more. Until then, here's Tyler Sullivan on Carmelo Anthony signing with Houston.
Carmelo Anthony is officially a member of the Rockets. The 13-time NBA All-Star signed his one-year, $2.4 million deal with Houston on Monday, joining forces with MVP James Harden and fellow All-Star Chris Paul. While Melo certainly still has the name recognition, he's not the same player we all remember from his days in New York, where he won a scoring title and averaged over 20 points a game. Last season for the OKC Thunder, Melo averaged below 20 points a game for the first time in his career, while also shooting the lowest field goal percentage of his career. That resulted in a 28.1 DK point per game average for the season, which ranked him 87th in the NBA. That production put him in the realm of DeMarre Carroll and Austin Rivers, not exactly the NBA's elite, but that his name value would suggest. What also makes Melo's move to Houston interesting is the report from ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski saying that Melo will come off the bench next season. If that report comes to fruition, that would be the first time in his NBA career that Melo has come off the bench, so there is some question mark as to how that will impact him next season. And with that lack of starters minutes, it will likely decrease his production and value in DFS.
Well, basketball is coming, people, and DK Live's Julian Edlow and RotoWire's Nick Whalen are here to talk about it. So, Julian, how much do you like Melo moving to the Rockets? This is a guy who hasn't been very receptive coming off the bench in the past.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the Rockets, I don't necessarily think this move really moves the needle for them whatsoever. They just took Golden State to a Game 7 and failed there. I think Trevor Ariza probably a better fit for them. But from a DFS standpoint, when we talk about Carmelo, I think this is a much better fit for him compared to where he's been in OKC last year and that horrid Knicks team that he was with, where you got to think he kind of just gave up there. But I mean, the huge factor here is, will Carmelo Anthony be willing to come off the bench for Houston? We saw when he started with Russell Westbrook and Paul George, he just really fell out of the loop and was a non-factor out there. But if he can come off the bench for this fast-paced Houston team, get some minutes when James Harden is off the floor, I think he could actually be a little bit more relevant from a fantasy perspective.
Nick, how relevant do you expect Carmelo Anthony to be in Houston from the fantasy perspective?
No, I mean, like Julian said, I think it is a lot about Melo coming to terms with where he is in his career as a 34-year-old. Clearly the nominal value of starting, still means a lot to him at this point. But as we saw last year, when he was on the court with Russell Westbrook and Paul George, he wasn't comfortable. He was forcing things. He was taking far too many three-pointers. His efficiency plummeted. And it was something that, began as first 10, 15 games of the season. We figured eventually they'd play their way out of it. That never really happened. He was no more comfortable in game 82 or in the first round of the playoffs against Utah than he was in the first week of the season. So a lot of it's just going to come down to his mindset. If he's willing to flip that switch, be that sixth man off the bench. He doesn't even necessarily have to come off the bench. He just needs to be staggered with Chris Paul and James Harden, have the role, that he's able to accept and get back to being efficient three-point shooter. At that point, maybe he crawls back into being a top 80, top 90 type of player. By the end of last season, he was barely cracking the top 100 in terms of fantasy points per game per the NBA's official scoring system. And he was providing roughly the same value as, a Dario Saric or a Kent Bazemore.
All right, now let's get into some ADP chatter. Is an ADP of 5 too high or too low for Steph Curry, Nick?
If you think Steph's going to stay healthy, it could be about right. You know, really with Curry, it does depend a lot on your scoring settings. Obviously, if your league values 3-point percentage, and even more importantly with Curry, 3-point volume, you know, you could justify taking him, you know, maybe in the top 3. But, you know, I think, like I said, the thing with Curry is his health. I mean, he missed 31 games last season. That really sapped his season-long value. When he was on the court, he was great. You know, I mean, in terms of DFS, when he was healthy, he was fine. There really wasn't an issue there. Prior to last season, though, he had played at least 78 games in each of the previous 5 seasons. So the numbers are really in Curry's favor in that regard. I wouldn't necessarily be afraid to take him in the top 5, but there is something to be said about that basketball situation. I mean, Curry's ceiling, as good as he is, you know, he might be in his physical prime right now. Given the guys around him, he doesn't need to take 20 shots per game like he did before Durant was there. He doesn't need to average 30 points per game. He doesn't need to average 9 assists. So to me, there's kind of this artificial ceiling on Steph Curry right now, and it makes him a little bit more unappealing when you're comparing him to the rest of the elite options.
Julian, what do you think? Is it a little unappealing to take Steph Curry top 5?
Yeah, this is way too high for me. Nick hit on the main point. He played in 51 games last year. He's missed big chunks of these playoff runs that the Warriors have been going on, and it's been kind of forgettable, an afterthought, because it's the early rounds and they're the Warriors and they still beat everybody. But Curry's been back for the bigger games when they've mattered. This was an issue early in his career. I think Curry's been lucky to play in the amount of games that he has over this 4-year run for the Warriors. You go back early in his career, he had a lot of ankle injuries. And then even if you take the injuries out, I'm not interested in Curry in the top 5. He played only 32 minutes per game last year. That was his lowest since the 2011-2012 season. Kevin Durant's the best fantasy player on the Warriors. He's a guy that maybe you can talk me into, even though I'm starting to look at KD in the 5 to 10 range. Steph Curry, maybe at the back end of the top 10, but maybe not even in there for me when you factor in the injuries that he's had in his career.
Julian, how about an average draft position of 8 for the newest LA Laker, LeBron James?
Yeah, is this some kind of like sick joke, or are we really talking about this? Number 8 on LeBron, this is way too low. There are maybe 4 other guys in LeBron's class when we talk about, you know, the fantasy powers of the NBA, and that's Anthony Davis, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and the Greek Freak. But LeBron is always on the floor. We just talked about, can we count on Steph Curry being out there? Well, LeBron doesn't get hurt, ever. He is the most consistent fantasy option of all time. So I would consider LeBron not out of the realm at number 1 if you wanted to take him there, but he's definitely going in the top 5 for me. So 8 is way too low.
All right, Nick, how far off is an ADP of 8 for LeBron?
You know, I have to agree. Again, I think it's a little too low. I mean, he finished 3rd last year in fantasy points per game. He was 5th the year before. You know, the only argument I think you could really make is, you know, one, like Julian said, you know, if you're going to be the person who's going to predict that this is finally the year LeBron suffers some sort of catastrophic injury, you know, go ahead and do that. But there's really no reason to believe that that's going to be the case. You know, the only case that I could really make legitimately is that he has struggled in year 1, you know, when he got to Miami in 2010. He struggled in year 1 when he got to Cleveland, or I should say when he returned to Cleveland 4 years later. His efficiency dropped quite a bit that year. I think he was down 8 percentage points from the field. You know, it was very clear that there was an adjustment process as he left Miami and returned to Cleveland. I think he's going to go through a similar process this time around. And the other thing that that really comes to mind if you want to justify waiting on LeBron is that really for the first time in, I don't know, maybe a decade, maybe a dozen years, LeBron's mission doesn't seem to be get to the finals at all costs. He seems oddly at peace with maybe not making the finals, maybe not making it out of the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. So it remains to be seen, you know, how that's going to affect him in the regular season. I would be shocked if he plays 82 games again. I'd be shocked if he plays 80 games, maybe even 78 games. I'd be even more shocked if he leads the league in minutes for the 3rd straight year. I think we're going to see LeBron maybe take his foot off the gas a little bit in the regular season, but in the context of LeBron James, him taking his foot off the gas still means he's probably a top 5 or 6 fantasy commodity.
Yep, he's out there in LA to grow his brand. Julian and Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you kindly, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
All right, now it's time for a little segment that we're going to call Thorn in My Side. So Gary, and he's going to give us 3 fades for tonight. We're welcoming back our baseball guys to come in here and do this. Guys? So Thorn in My Side, Gary, and we want your 3 thorns. Hit us with one. We might not get to all 3 because, you know, a lot of information coming our way tonight.
Yeah, it's okay. It's unfortunate. I had a tying theme with all 3 of these guys. It was sort of like back in the day when episodes of Sesame Street were brought to you by a letter or a number. This episode of Thorn in Your Side is brought to you by the changeup. So let's start with Whit Merrifield. You know, on paper, Merrifield against a left-handed pitcher is always an option. I mean, you look at the numbers; they're fantastic. He's the 17th best WRC plus against left-handed pitching this season. He's reasonably priced at 4.6 for a leadoff hitter. Ryan Borucki is not someone you necessarily have to fear, but Borucki basically becomes a 2-pitch pitcher when facing a right-handed batter. Fastball, changeup, and he throws that changeups a whole lot in those situations, and it's by far his best pitch. Merrifield also yet to have an extra base hit off a changeup this season, and that's really a problem that goes overall for Whit Merrifield. I mentioned 17th in WRC plus against left-handed pitching. Of the top 30 players, qualified players in baseball against left-handed pitchers, he is the only one, with Lorenzo Cain hitting a home run this afternoon, that has an isolated power below 200 with that WRC plus. They are hollow numbers. This guy doesn't actually contribute anything. He just puts up some pretty splits.
Steve, your Cliff Notes take on Merrifield.
Yeah, I think Gary's just trying to protect his hometown team here because they're going against the Blue Jays. So all I hear is just a ton of noise right there. I mean, Merrifield has been fantastic against lefties. 390 WOBA with the 190 ISO against lefties. Just throw him in there.
Pierce, what about you? Cliff Notes right here.
No, Witt's got a 106 ISO at home. Borucki doesn't give up hard contact. 0.3 home runs per 9. Not a hitter's ballpark.
All right, Gary, and we owe you a thorn in my side because that's actually all we have time for.
It's okay.
We owe you one.
We want to do slate approved, right?
No, we gotta go.
That's it. We're out of here.
Yeah, I mean we can't talk to them anymore about slate approved. Don't have the time to talk about what we learned today either.
So much
what
information.
We learned is there's a lot of information going to be coming your way on this show, right?
Yep. So it'll be every night, 6 o'clock Eastern, Facebook Live on
DK Live.
DK Live. Yes,
YouTube
download
Live.
the app.
Yeah. But this has been the inaugural episode of The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Emerson Lotzia, and like he said, we're going to be back here at 6 p.m. tomorrow night with more fantasy news and expert analysis. We'll see you then.